Right. Hi, everybody. We're here tonight to talk about summer camps. We have the wonderful crew from Camp PHEver to share their experience and some tips and tricks. So I'm going to just turn it right over to the team. They can do their introductions.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'll start us off. My name is Ava. I'm a current pediatric genetic counselor at UT Health Houston in Houston. I work with Kate and Paige, but I'm also a new co-director for Camp PHEver, which is a camp for kids with PKU in Texas. And today we're going to be talking to you about camps for kids with PKU. We'll talk a little bit about fever and all sorts of things for you guys, but we can go ahead and start with some other introductions for the Fever team. I don't know, Kate, if you want to go first.
Hi, everyone. Like Ava said, my name is Kate. This will be my 10th year being involved with Camp PHEver, and I'm really excited about that.
My name is Megan. I'm one of the other directors, and this is gonna be my seventh year involved with Fever.
Hi, my name is Paige Roberts. I'm one of the metabolic dietitians involved with camp, and this is my seventh year involved with camp as well.
And I'm Danielle Weiss, a metabolic dietitian at a clinic here in Texas with Megan. And I have been one of the Camp PHEver dietitians for 12 years, 12 great years.
And I forgot to add, but I this will be my third year involved with camp, so kind of new to the team, but very happy to be here. So just to kind of give an overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight, so we will first start off with what PKU camps even are, and then we'll give you a nice inside look into Camp PHEver to get an idea of what that can look like for maybe your future child or yourself if you currently have PKU and are interested in attending a camp. But we'll also talk about why these camps are important because they are great for many different reasons and can have a really good impact on these kids. And then also we'll talk a little bit about, what if your child is unable to attend a PKU camp, what kind of alternative options are available. We'll also set aside some time for questions if anybody has any, but we'll provide an email too that you're more than welcome to reach out if you don't feel like asking the questions live. That is totally valid. So, kind of before we get into all of that, just kind of starting off with some things that you guys are already probably very familiar with. We know that living with PKU can have various different challenges. Particularly, the main things that we know about are just the significant discipline and self-control that it can require in order to maintain the restricted diet that we know kiddos with PKU need to maintain. But it can also impact relationships and socialization, causing feelings of social isolation and otherness because of things like the formula that kiddos with PKU have to drink. It's different from their peers. They can't eat all of the things that their peers can eat. And so that can cause some concerns and some challenges for these kiddos. It can result in stigma and bullying and has been shown to just be a source of frustration and embarrassment for some individuals. And so, kind of talking about disease-specific camps as a whole, because PKU camps kind of fall under this umbrella term of disease-specific camps. These are camps that allow children with chronic and/or life-limiting conditions to enjoy a typical camp experience in an environment that is medically safe. So you may have heard of other camps out there for kids with like cancer or limb differences or all sorts of different medical conditions. PKU is one of those things, and we have our own specific camps that kind of fall under this big old term. But talking about PKU camps specifically, these are typically weekend to week long camps for individuals with PKU and their families. They tend to focus more on building a PKU community, so meeting other families and other children with PKU. They might also have some focus on PKU related education, so helping parents who maybe have a new baby diagnosed with PKU to learn how to even raise a child with PKU. What things do they need to consider? What resources are available to them? Things like that. And they also might focus more on like a recreational aspect of things. So just having fun in an environment with other people who are similar to them, and also in an environment where they might not have to worry about, their diet or things like that quite as much as they would in other places. This is kind of a map of the PKU camps that I am aware of that exists. I have a little asterisk just to say that there could be others that I wasn't able to find in my Google searching. But as you can see, there's PKU camps all across the United States. I even found one in Canada that I didn't know about when I was researching for this. But there's quite a few on the East Coast, some on the West Coast, and then we happen to have two here in Texas as well. But you can see a nice spread across the country. I talked a little bit about, PKU camps and what they are, but they can come in different styles. So a lot of the camps on that previous map are what we would call family camps. So these are aimed towards children with PKU and their families. They usually last around a weekend or so, or they might be a day camp. It varies, of course, from place to place. But these camps typically focus on fun, getting together with a bunch of other families who have children with PKU or who have PKU. And then also usually have some sort of educational component like I was talking about. So maybe teaching families about different recipes that they can try at home, or different things that they might want to consider as their child is growing up, just things like that. The other kind of big group of camps that exist are what I like to call children-only camps. These are usually just open to children with PKU and sometimes their siblings, so the parents usually don't typically attend at these camps. They can last a little bit longer than these weekend camps, or they might also be a weekend, can vary. But they usually have more of an emphasis on fun or like recreational activities, and typically having that typical summer camp experience without having to worry about, focusing on their diet and things like that. That's usually taken care of for them. So kind of the two different styles. There are other styles out there. This is just kind of two of the big ones. There are some that focus, more on like young women who are, as they're growing older and considering, going through pregnancy, like how to maintain their diet as they're going through those life milestones and make sure they're being healthy for not only them, but also their future children. There are all sorts of different ones out there, depending on what you might be interested in being involved in. I'm taking some time to talk about Camp PHEver specifically. This camp would fall more into that second category I mentioned. It's a 6-day summer camp for children with PKU and their siblings from 6 to 18 years old. Our philosophy is to provide a camp that allows children with PKU and their siblings to enjoy that normal camp experience while also maintaining the necessary diet restrictions that they need to properly manage their PKU. We talked about those challenges that we know some kids with PKU may face in regards to their self-esteem and confidence. And so one of our other goals is to help restore that self-esteem and confidence to those children that they often lose because of those special dietary needs like we talked about. Our camp was founded in 1997. We're actually entering our 30th year this summer, which is really exciting that we've been around for so long. And so super excited about that. And we usually have about 80 or so campers nowadays. We would say more consistently about 80 or so campers every year. This is our photo from last year in 2025. You can see a good sizable group that we have of all of our, campers and staff and counselors as well. Camp PHEver, we mentioned that we're all in Texas. So Camp PHEver, of course, is located in Texas. It's in a little town called Burton, Texas. It's near Brenham, if you're familiar with Bluebell ice cream. Pretty close over there, but also is about an hour and a half outside of Houston, which you might be more familiar with Houston. But it's located at a place called Camp PHEver, which is this really awesome campsite in Texas that provides barrier-free activities to kids and adults with challenging illnesses and special needs. They've created the entire camp like from the ground up with, children with different abilities in mind. Like for example, the sidewalks are specifically created to be wide enough to allow two kids in a wheelchair to roll side by side as they're going from one activity to the next. The cabins are fully accessible. The pool is accessible. So it's a really cool place. They opened in 1998, and we've been there since they've opened. And they have lots of different campers all year round. So not just Camp PHEver, but they have all sorts of different camps for other kids. Like I had mentioned, like camps for kids with cancer, camps for kids with, limb differences or muscular dystrophy, all things. And so they have them throughout the summer, but also throughout the school year too. So there's always some great stuff going on at Camp PHEver. And they're actually opening another location too next year. So they're going to be able to do even more great stuff and serve even more people. So really excited about that. So just talking a little bit about what exactly a day in the life at Camp PHEver can look like. So this is just a general breakdown of what our days tend to look like at camp. So we usually wake up around 8 or so and get breakfast and do morning meds. After that, for about 3 hours, we have some morning activities that usually about an hour long each. I'll talk about those activities and more in a second, but think of your typical camp activities: canoeing, fishing, archery, just going around and having fun at like a typical summer camp. You have lunchtime around noon, and then after that, we usually have what we call cabin time, just time for the kids to hang out in their cabins with their cabin mates, just relax a little bit after all the craziness of the day before they usually end up going to pool right after that. So they have some pool time usually every day. They'll have some more afternoon activities. Then we always also have built-in dedicated time for our campers to prep their formula for the next day. So while Camp PHEver is probably what we would consider more of a recreational camp, focusing on the fun, we also do try to incorporate opportunities for our campers to, take more ownership of their management of their PKU, even the little ones, even the 6-year-olds who are very eager to help prep their formula, trust me. We always make sure that we have that time for them. So we do that every day. And then after that, you usually have dinner. Then we have an evening activity. Oftentimes there's a specific like kind of highlight activity of the day. So like the first day, we usually have a campfire. The second day, we might have like extra pool time where they get to do poolside karaoke and stuff like that. There's a paint war, which I'll show you more about in a second. And then one night we have a talent show, and then another night we have a dance. So there's always something to look forward to at the end of the day at camp that makes it really exciting and fun. And then usually around 9 p.m. is when most people go to the cabins to hopefully sleep. They always try to bug their counselors to stay up a little bit later. But typically this is kind of how the day would usually look for our campers. And then our older campers actually will stay out a little bit later past 9. They usually have their own special activities just to give them the opportunity to do a little bit more age appropriate activities for them and get up to stay a little bit later with their friends, things like that. So lots of fun activities that lots of our campers look forward to. And then I also want to take some time to talk about our menu. So of course, we focus on fun, but we make sure that we have our dietitians and everybody available to come up with these wonderful recipes and menus for our campers so they can still maintain the low pro diet that they need based off of their fee prescription. This is just like a sample menu of the different options that we have. A lot of these we still have today. Some we might have swapped out. And these are pictures of some of our low protein foods. I've starred some of the camper favorites, I would say. The barbecue jackfruit sandwiches are really good. I actually started making those at my own home, and I don't have PKU. I just think they're really yummy. And then the low protein cheese pizza is another popular one. The cheesy potato casserole, I feel like, is probably one of the most popular ones. And that's the one on the lower row of photos on the left. But lots of different options. The way our menus work is when you go to apply for our camp, after you submit your application or as a part of the application, you'll actually go and pick out like how many servings of whatever options are for the day based off of your child's like fee prescription. So the children can kind of pick and choose whether they want a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that. When they get to the day, of course, we do this months in advance. When they get there, they're like, actually, I want more of this. So that's okay. We all have our dietitians there, of course, to help adjust if needed. But that's a little bit about how our menu works. I don't know if Danielle or Paige, as our dietitians, if you have anything else you'd like to add or anything like that. Mhm.
I think you touched on it just now. That I think that's one of the common questions we get is, what if what my, child pick or what I picked in March or April isn't like what they want that day, or they see something that they didn't choose that they want to try because it looks good. Maybe they didn't know what it was when they were doing their menu online. That's what we're there for, and we always like work with them, and we want them to try new foods. So it's very flexible, but we make sure it stays within their fee prescription.
Mhm. Yeah, we always like to think of camp as a good opportunity for, like Danielle said, for campers to try different things that they might not have tried before. I mean, I feel like we get a lot that, especially the younger campers that come and try new things, and they're like, wow, this is really good. So good things. And we also have recipes too that we will send campers home with, or have like a link that they can take home. So if they're interested in remaking some of the meals we make at camp, they can do so because we have copies of all of the recipes that we use. So kind of moving on from the menu, talking a little bit about our cabins and counselors and just kind of how that breaks down. So each cabin usually has about 7 to 12 campers or so, and then we have usually about 3 counselors per cabin. We group our cabins by sex and by age, and this is kind of a breakdown of how the cabins looked last year, with of course the caveat that this can always change from year to year. Some years we get more of a certain age group or a certain sex, so we kind of have to adjust depending upon how our numbers are looking. But usually cabins 1 and 2 are our older cabins. 3 and 4, kind of those preteen, early teen years. 5, 6, and 8 are the 9 to 11-year-olds, and then 7 to 9 are usually our youngest cabins. I think one of the great things too about Camp PHEver is that a majority of our counselors are actually former campers who have PKU themselves. We have separate applications for our counselors, and Kate, Megan, and I screen them to make sure that they're going to be good examples for our campers. So we have them like submit their recent fee levels and things like that, just to make sure that they'll be good role models for them. And they are. They're fantastic. We get a lot of college students, but not just college students. We get some people who love camp so much that even now, as they're in their 30s or so, they still make sure they take time off of work or whatever to come back because they just love being able to play such a big role in this group. And so that's usually one of, I think, a cool, unique thing about Camp PHEver. If our counselors are not former campers that have PKU, they're usually like genetic counseling students or medical students, or some of our genetics residents at like UT Health or local areas. So usually people who are very familiar with PKU and everything that it involves. So now getting into the fun part, what kind of activities do you actually have at camp? And these are just some photos from our camp last year. So you can see lots of fun things from this. But more specifically, we have, like I had mentioned, the typical camp things. So archery, canoes, fishing. We have a couple of fishing options. We have drop fishing, usually for the younger kids, where they can just kind of drop their line right in front of this little dock. They catch so many fish. I feel like it's a competition every year of like which cabin or who in the cabin can catch the most. And that's usually the size fish they get, those little ones. And then we also, for the older cabins, have like cast fishing too. So lots of options for the kids. We also have something called barnyard, which is really just where we have a lot of like barn animals. We also have horses that the kids are able to ride. There's like chickens that they can pet, or rabbits that they can pet, which a lot of our younger cabins are really excited about. So those are some of the activities. We also have like ropes courses. We have both indoor and outdoor ropes courses at Camp for All. We have this really nice building called Star Place, which is where that photo on the far left is. They have a nice rock wall and indoor ropes course. That's really cool. It goes inside the ropes course, but at the very end, there's like this big cutout in the building, and they can take a zip line from the inside of Star Place all the way outside. I feel like that's just a super cool thing. I don't know. I feel like kids love zip lining and stuff like that. So really cool options for them. We also have outdoor zip lines and outdoor ropes courses too. And all of the campers will rotate through each of the activities at least once. And then usually towards the end of the week, they have an opportunity to repeat an activity if they're interested. Another thing that's really popular is what we call spa and tea party. There's a giant costume closet at Camp for All where the kids can go and dress up, and it's so fun to see all of the different things they come up with. But they will dress up in all their nice little costumes, and then there's lots of different like play makeup and hair like spray coloring, as you can see in the photos, where they'll sometimes do themselves, but then also do their counselors too. So lots of fun things with that. And then the tea party portion is we all have a nice table, and they have little lemonade and like low pro cakes for them to eat during that activity. And then another thing is a recording studio, which is a part of this building called Star Place, where they have like kind of a built like semi-professional recording studio where the kids can go and record themselves singing, and they will record it so that it can be burned on a CD that they can then be sent home with later on at the end of camp. But they also really enjoy that too. So getting together and screaming into the microphones is a lot of fun for them. But lots of activities there. I also like to highlight our our cooking class and competition with the dietitians too. So again, we focus more on having fun, but we do try to incorporate these different activities to help, provide some sort of education for our campers. So with this, they have picked out recipes and have them kind of hands-on try to create the different recipes that they've picked out that are all low protein. Again, options that they can take back home with them to make at home. We also have a competition where the older cabins can get a bunch of ingredients and try to make low protein dishes. And that's always interesting what they come up with. And then usually the staff will judge who has the best dish. So again, lots of different opportunities for this. And again, for them to learn how to take more management and ownership of their PKU. Another activity we have, of course, I mentioned we have pool every day, but we also have a water day one of the days, which is where we take a couple of hours out of the day to do a bunch of different water activities that the kids will rotate through. So these big old inflatable water slides or the different water balloons or tossing wet sponges around each other or not sour cream, shaving cream on top of each other, things like that. So lots of fun activities for them, again, to get outside and enjoy themselves and just have fun. This is the infamous paint war that I mentioned. We have our campers, they get about a baggie of about 4 or 5 little cups of powdered paint. And then we'll essentially just say kind of ready, set, go, and then go out in this big old field and just start throwing the paint at everybody. Usually the counselors are a big target, or the staff members are also a pretty popular target. But it's a lot of fun for them and they really enjoy it. Our older cabins, after everybody's done with the powdered paint, the older cabins will actually get a separate paint war for themselves to use like wet paint. Again, just another kind of tradition that the older cabins like to have, giving them an opportunity to spend more time with their friends, separate from everybody else. But yeah, and then of course we have even more than this. Like I mentioned, we have a talent show and dance and all sorts of different things. This is just one little portion of what we have available at camp. But you can see lots of different activities that the kids enjoy. Spend a lot of time outside, make them real tired at the end of the day, but they have a lot of fun. And then this is just information about Camp PHEver if you liked what you saw in the previous slides and maybe you're interested in sending your child to camp. We would love to have them. Our dates this year are from July 5th to July 11th, and our applications are open now. They close at the end of May, so getting your application in if you're interested, the sooner the better. Our theme this year is under the big top, or like circus themed. We always have a theme every year. Last year it was under the sea or under the fee. Before that it was safari or safari themed. So always try to have fun with it. This QR code goes to our website, which has a link to the application as well as additional information if you're interested. I will also say that with camp, we do have a cost to attend camp. We wish camp could be free for everybody, but unfortunately, we don't have the funds available to make that happen just yet, but maybe one day. But if you are interested in attending camp and maybe the financial aspect of it is a barrier, we have scholarships available. So there are options for that as well. So that is there if you're interested.
Hey Ava, I was gonna, we're gonna save questions at the end, but I have a pertinent one right now that someone
Go ahead.
if you don't mind me asking. It was a question about applying to camp. Does everyone get accepted, and can you return yearly?
Yes, yeah. So everybody does get accepted. As long as we have the space, we're happy to take you. And so far, that hasn't been an issue. And we are trying to grow in future years. But yes, you are more than welcome to attend yearly. We have campers that start from when they're 6 years old. They're very excited to finally be able to come. And then they stay until they graduate once they're, 18 or onward. So more than welcome to have you for that whole amount of time, for sure.
And I'll kind of just jump in and say the application necessarily isn't about acceptance, but it's more about getting information about your child, medications they're on, what formula they're on, what's their fee prescription, more so that we can have a medical picture of your child so that we best know how to care for them. So I know application has the implication that you could be denied, but we don't typically deny anybody. And like Ava said, so far we have not run out of beds, but there have been some years we've tried to run out of beds.
Yes.
And that's where you fill out the menu as well as part of that application. So lots of information that we need to be able to have camp run as smoothly as possible and be prepared, but not from an acceptance denial thing.
And siblings and Camp PHEver is open to siblings of PKUers?
Yes.
The website also says siblings are like if there's space, we've never run out of space for siblings, but of course if we needed to, we would prioritize kiddos with PKU if we ever needed to and did run out of space, but haven't been there yet.
Awesome. Well, sounds like we might have some people interested. That's exciting. So kind of moving a little bit on from, Camp PHEver specifically, but just to talk a little bit about, why exactly are these camps important? I mean, we are very passionate about them, and of course they are important to us, but what is the greater impact of them? We know in general that there have been many studies that have shown that disease-specific camps kind of as a whole have a positive impact on social support for the kids that attend them. They also can help foster strong peer relationships between the campers and others, and then can help increase these feelings of self-confidence and self-acceptance. Um, but what about PKU camps specifically? One of the reasons why I'm here talking to you is because when I was a genetic counseling student, I did my thesis on camp. So my research project in order to graduate from my program, I did it on camp, specifically looking at, those questions about how PKU camps specifically can impact these things like self-esteem, self-acceptance or acceptance of their diagnosis, and different relationships that they make. And so as a part of that, I had interviewed 20 current and or former campers from Camp PHEver, as well as other PKU camps. And from that, I was able to learn that Camp PHEver can have, or PKU camps such as Camp PHEver can have an overwhelmingly positive impact on the self-esteem and self-acceptance for campers. It can also help foster important PKU connections and relationships, and then overall can have a significant and long-term impact on campers when it comes to things like their self-esteem, acceptance, and relationships. And I'll kind of give you some examples of that as we continue. So talking about self-esteem and acceptance, all of my participants, so 100% had mentioned that camp promotes these feelings of normalcy and belonging. They say camp makes PKU feel like the norm, like they're no longer isolated. Everybody at camp has PKU, and it's weird if you don't have PKU, more or less, because there's so many that do. And camp helps campers not feel alone in their PKU, more importantly. And I've included some quotes from what my interviews had said because I just think they're so lovely and impactful. So this one is saying that, it was impactful because I got to see that camp changes kids' lives. And like, this is a home for kids that don't feel like they have a home or a place to belong. I also had 100% of my participants note that camp increases their self-confidence and security in their PKU. They felt more comfortable talking about their PKU and their struggles with it, not only with their fellow peers, but also with others in their life, like their parents or their providers. They felt more accepting of their PKU and overall just more comfortable in their own skin. They also had increased confidence and independence with their diet management. Like I said, the formula prep and the cooking class with the dietitians maybe are just like an hour or so out of the day, but it still has this big impact on these campers, especially not only now, but as they go into the future. I also had a good portion of my participants talk about how camp inspired a more positive outlook on their PKU and their future, help them be overall more positive about their diagnosis and help them understand their future with PKU better. Like I had mentioned, with our camp counselors, we get people that are going to be good role models for our campers, and that truly does have a big impact on our campers, talking about how seeing their camp counselors, go to college and successfully manage their PKU, have these great jobs doing different things, be college athletes, like all these things that they might not have thought before that they were going to be able to do, has helped kind of inspire them to be able to do those things. So having our counselors there, I think is such a wonderful thing and have a really big impact on our campers too. And then, there it goes. And so another kind of quote is talking about, so being able to have some dedicated time to talk to people who really get it, I think has helped me have a more positive outlook on my condition and how it affects me as a person. So again, just showing that impact of, meeting all these other people who are similar to them and how that can be important. So talking a little bit about relationships briefly, I also had 100% of people mention how camp is just a great avenue for creating lasting and supportive friendships with others who have PKU. We've had some campers that come to camp and they have never met anybody with PKU before, and so it's a great opportunity for them to meet others who are going through the same things as them. 90% of my participants had claimed that their relationships that they had with friends from camps were very close, and that these were people that they would continue to contact, well after camp had ended. I even had some talking about how even as they were adults, many years later, they still relied on their camp friends for support, especially as they were going through different life milestones like pregnancy or just getting older and dealing with, how hard sometimes it can be to stay on diet as an adult. So still has a big impact for them as well. Again, talking about how this connection is just so much more than I've ever had. Like having friends is a very good thing, but it's never been someone who understands me so thoroughly as these people do. So really just highlighting that important connection that they can get from camp. And then also another interesting thing we found was for a portion of my participants, they talked about how camp helps foster closer relationships between campers and their healthcare providers that also attend camp. So, we're genetic counselors and dietitians on this call. We see patients with PKU pretty often in our clinics, and we attend camp. And so we had, some participants talk about how because of that, they felt more comfortable opening up to their providers. They also talked about how their providers felt more like family or like friends because of that. Again, feeling more comfortable telling them how things are really going after going to camp with them at a clinic visit rather than if they only saw them in the clinic. So another kind of impact on relationships that we can see because of camp. And then lastly, just kind of talking about overall camp impact. My 85% of my participants had mentioned when it comes to these psychosocial things, so self-esteem, acceptance of their diagnosis, and relationships, camp is one of the most impactful PKU experiences for individuals with PKU. This is probably one of my favorite quotes. I used it in the title of my thesis because I think it's so funny. But this person had said, I think other PKU events outside of camp did make an impact, but I think Camp PHEver, it's just like the end all be all. If I'm being honest, that is like the holy grail of PKU support. That place is so magical. Maybe we should put that in our catchphrase on our website or something. Holy grail of PKU support. Again, I had all of my participants also mention that these impacts that I'm talking about on things like self-esteem, relationships, acceptance, those weren't something that they just felt in the days or the weeks right after camp. These were things that they all noted they felt the impacts of even well after camp had ended. Even years later, for some people, I interviewed people that hadn't been to camp in 10 or so years, and they still noted that they felt these impacts on themselves. So again, just to show that they're saying these impacts were long term. They've made lifelong friends that they can reach out to whenever they want, people that they still talk to every single day to this day, and that's huge. So kind of just an aside to just really emphasize the importance of these camps and how impactful they really can be on these kids with direct quotes from them themselves talking about how that impact is. So I know we're talking a lot about different camps. It can be overwhelming, or you may be wondering, how do I even find out about these things? There's only a handful of them in the United States, and PKU is a rare disease. So how do you kind of get more connected? The National PKU Alliance, of course, is a great resource. So if you're here tonight, we're glad you're here. If you're watching later on, again, we're glad you found the NPKUA. The newsletter specifically, if you're not already signed up for it, will send out different opportunities that may be coming up or different camps that may be coming up. So if you're looking for that type of event specifically, that might be a good way to get connected. The Flock Community Events page is also a great resource. Flock Community is another kind of PKU advocacy group. They have a really nice website with a calendar that has all the different events, not just for Flock, but also for other organizations that are coming up month by month. So another great way to kind of look and see what's going on. I also just always want to plug getting involved with your local PKU organizations. Even if they don't have a camp, there are some other ones that exist out there that I had found that maybe don't have a camp themselves, but have other events. So maybe they have potlucks every month, or they have days out where they go out as a community and do an event together or something like that, or do an activity together. I also learned that some of these organizations, if they don't have a camp themselves, they might offer scholarship opportunities or grants to help attend these camps, especially if they're in another state. One that I will plug, and I had to write it down so I make sure I tell you the right thing, is the Intermountain PKU and Allied Disorders Association. This is housed mainly in like Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Indiana, and Nevada. Those specific states, if you live in one of those states and are interested in attending a camp like Camp PHEver, they actually have scholarships and grants available that you can apply for. I think it's up to $750 to help financially get your child to camp or help, cover the cost of camp, things like that. So definitely looking for those opportunities and resources can be helpful. And of course, like I said, they have their own events and things going on that can be a good way to get connected. Another one that I'll also plug is just, of course, online groups like Facebook groups, things like that. When I was initially starting out my thesis project, I had joined a couple of PKU Facebook groups, with the thought that I might have distributed my project to them, but ended up not doing that. But I'm still involved with them or still a part of them. And so I see they're very active. People are always posting, different events that are coming up or different, asking for advice or if they have questions about different medications or alternatives for certain, diet things. So those are also a great way to learn of different opportunities or just to get connected with other people who have PKU. And then again, I know we're talking about all how great PKU camps are, but I showed you that map earlier, and unfortunately, there's not a PKU camp in every state. And so for some people, that can be hard to get to a PKU camp. So just wanted to take some time to talk about, what if PKU camp specifically isn't an option, attending a summer camp in general, while it can seem kind of scary, is definitely very feasible for kids with PKU. We've had many people who go to camp, PKU camp, but then also go to their typical summer camp and are very successful in doing that. It just may require a little extra planning. So just some overarching like tips for attending a non-PKU camp. So it can always be helpful, of course, to research the camp ahead of time. What are their food policies? Do they already have accommodation options in place already? I feel like as time is going on, dietary restrictions and different diets are becoming more of a common thing. And so I feel like camps are probably growing with that and might already have options or like plans in place for different dietary restrictions. So just kind of researching ahead of time what kind of already exists versus what you might need to be more involved in or build up. I think another thing is to help offer to help educate the staff members, just giving them a simple overview of what PKU is and why it's important for kids with PKU to stay on diet. I think, we know PKU is a rare disease, and so not a lot of people everyday people are familiar with it. And so, just offering an opportunity to help educate others on what it is and why it's important, I think can be helpful. PKU too is kind of hard because it's not like an allergy where if you like eat, something you're allergic to, you have an immediate allergic reaction. It's a little bit difficult for some people to understand that it's more so if, staying off diet for a long time can have these long-term effects that kind of build up over time rather than an immediate thing that somebody can look out for and notice. So I think just letting people know and be aware of the different nuances that can come with that can help them be better prepared to have your child attend their camp. And then also just being helpful by providing, written instructions or recipes or a list of different low protein options for foods, I think is helpful. I think a lot of people don't really realize how much protein is in a lot of things. I remember when I first learned about PKU a long time ago, they had talked about how just the amount of protein in a slice of bread is too much for some people who have PKU, or that's like the max amount of protein they can have in a day. And I didn't even realize that there was that much protein in bread. So there's lots of things out there that I think people just aren't as aware of. So offering to help kind of make them more aware, I think is a great thing to do. And then, of course, food and formula planning, packing meals or snacks if they're not provided by camp already, sending extra formula, extra medical foods and options. I think another big thing that can especially help, making kids not feel as isolated or as different from their peers at a typical summer camp is helping to plan for different special events. So if they're having like a pizza night or like a cupcake night or ice cream night or something like that, being able to bring an alternative option for your child or making sure the camp will have an alternative option for them, I think is another great thing to just kind of plan ahead and make sure that's available to help make it feel more normal and not kind of isolate them from the others. And then, of course, also, helping to encourage your child to advocate for themselves. I know it can be scary sending your kid to a camp, any camp, whether that's a PKU camp or a typical summer camp, especially if they're younger. But teaching them to, be able to speak up for themselves when somebody offers them food that they might not be able to have, or, advocating for themselves in that way, I think is great, not only while they're young, but also as they get older and take more ownership of their management. Just kind of teaching them that early on, I think is good. But those are kind of our tips and tricks that we have for right now. Of course, not the end all be all, but just some ideas moving forward if maybe attending a PKU camp itself isn't as great of an option or as possible of an option for you all. And then that's mainly that we wanted to talk about. I don't know, Sarah, are there any other questions in the chat or anything?
Yeah, there's a couple questions, and I forgot to mention in the beginning there is a Q&A box. If you guys have questions, please throw them in. There's also a chat. Just the difference between those is we will see the things that go in Q&A. Everyone will see the things that go in chat, but feel free to use either one. And we do have a few questions here. So it looks like these are maybe fever specifics. The first one you mentioned, kids prepping their own formula. What if a child, maybe a younger child or maybe any age child, just hasn't learned to do that yet? What kind of support, I'm thinking they're asking, what kind of support is there for that if they haven't learned, or should they be doing practice ahead of time? What's your tips?
Yeah, I think, practicing ahead of time is always a good idea, or especially to prepare them for that, just to kind of plant that seed. But I will say we're not just giving them the formula and the water and free rein, making them do it all by themselves. We have our counselors, especially if it's a younger cabin. Our counselors in that cabin are well prepared to kind of help them, guide them through that process, and make sure they have that support. But Megan or Kay, I don't know if there's anything else you need to add.
Our dietitians and typically dietetic interns are always running around at formula prep, and they are the ones who answer most of the formula questions compared to the counselors to make sure everyone is getting everything mixed correctly.
That is
They
true.
can maybe add in.
Yeah.
Paige and
They
I are
come with-
there for all of the formula prep. And you did see on that slide, there are many cabins and a lot of campers, but they are divided into groups. So it's not like 80 people coming at one time. Um, and usually even the little ones, 6-year-olds, like might need a little help those first few days, but by the end of the middle of the week to end of the week, they're like, I got it. And they just want to do it by themselves. And they're really proud that they can do it by themselves. But we're always there to help in the beginning. And Paige and I and the directors do review. And during the registration process, you are asked like what the formula is and also like the recipe and any mixing instructions. And we'll all review that ahead of time so that we're kind of prepared to answer those questions that may come up. And we have everyone's like formula information right there at Formula Prep, so it's easy to reference.
Great.
And we send out confirmation emails closer to camp because the applications are filled out now in April and May, and then camp is in July. So a few weeks before camp, myself, Kate, and Ava send out emails that are like, hey, here's the fee prescription, here's the medications, here's the formula information. If any of that has changed, we update it so that you don't have to like provide updates at camp or have the wrong information or outdated information, because things can change in between application and camp.
Great. Diet question. So maybe, for you, Paige and Danielle or anyone, I'm sure can answer this, but you shared the wonderful low protein recipes and kind of a sample menu. How do you accommodate the menu for different tolerances for children, maybe either on medication or just have a higher tolerance and eat a higher amount of protein?
So, whenever you fill out the application for our camp, you would fill in your child's prescription milligram of fee or grams of protein. And we actually have two lines at camp. So, we have our low protein line that all of our kiddos on a low protein diet go through, and we're able to comfortably accommodate about 40 grams of protein on that line with all of our different options from classic PKU on diet up to about 40 grams because, maybe your child picks low protein pasta if they have a lower fee prescription, but they might pick regular pasta if they have a higher fee prescription. And then we have the other food line since we do allow siblings. So that would be more of a regular protein line. We've had some campers who have done things like regular line if they're like on a therapy that allows them to completely liberalize their diet, or we might do a vegetarian option through the regular line if they're above 40 grams but not quite eating like a full regular diet. We get lots of questions about different types of diets too. So I'd say like we're always happy to answer, what your child's diet might look like at camp or work with you to figure out what line would be best for them at this email if someone wants to reach out.
Great. Thank you. I have one more question here. Again, if anyone else has another question, feel free to throw it in. But how much parental communication can someone expect during Camp PHEver? Is there any regular check-ins, or is it kind of like we'll see you at the end of the week?
I can take that one. So one thing about Camp for All is that it's on that 206-acre property. And so we are very much a little bit away from kind of like general society. And by that, I mean the internet. And so there are certain buildings within camp where we do get really good phone reception, and there are main landlines on the property for us to use. I still, Megan, Ava, and I are able to like get on and check our emails. It's just not 100% reliable. I have in the past for parents as well as children that are feeling a little anxious about being away from their family. I have sent emails. I would say phone calls have happened less. Most of the time, I try to take like a very short video of them maybe saying hi to their parents or saying like what their favorite activity was, and I email it. But we try really to have the kids kind of just live in the experience and enjoy their time with their friends and build those relationships. But I'm always happy to try to be in as much communication as a parent would like. Definitely the first time around, it definitely is quite kind of nerve-wracking. But I promise that everyone here has a different role, and all of those roles are there to support your child and take care of them. I don't know if we've necessarily mentioned it, but we do have medical doctors on staff that are geneticists, so people that treat PKU. And so we always have doctors around, even for bumps and bruises. And so we do have quite the staff to be able to take care of them. But I always like to tell parents that, if you're not getting a text message from your child, it's probably because they're out at archery, and nobody can get a text message at archery. And so I think that's one thing that I always like parents to know is that if you don't hear from your child, it's not necessarily a point of fear. It's most likely that they just don't have a reception. But we do have many ways to reach out to you. And if anyone else wants to kind of build off of that, I'll kind of stop here.
And we do have kids who certainly come to camp with cell phones that can send texts and things. Getting pictures and things to go through, you got to be in the right spot. But for all but our oldest cabins, we do we've had cell phones get lost and things. So we've changed our rules a few years ago to have that either cell phones stay in a counselor's backpack during activities so they don't get lost on the 260-acre property, or that they're staying in the cabin. But during cabin time, during an activity, if a kiddo doesn't want to participate in something, they can have access to it. They always can have access at any point. It's more for ease of not losing these expensive devices. So that's also a reason that they may not be quite as responsive to text, is that we're trying to protect the devices.
Great. We did get another question, a wonderful question. Is there a way to donate to this camp to help fund it and help those who cannot afford it? So if you want to do a plug for options to support, it'd be great too.
We do have a Camp PHEver fund that's hosted through the UT Health website. And Sarah, if there's a way that maybe I could share that direct link with you that you could then kind of tie to this webinar, I think that would be the best way. And we greatly appreciate anyone who donates, because that all directly goes to the funds to be allowed on the Camp for All property, which is very expensive in its own right. But also, that the more that we get donated, the more scholarships that we're able to provide for other individuals. And so we would greatly welcome, share them with your friends, family, or coworkers, and pretty much anybody. If someone could get a direct line to like any CEO of a fantastic company it seems wants to have a support of a great cause, we would love that. But thank you so much for asking that question, and I'll send a link to Sarah to share with everybody.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. That's all we have for questions, unless again anyone can pop one in. We do have a few more minutes, but I just wanted to thank the wonderful team at Camp PHEver tonight. This was wonderful, and I don't know if anyone has any parting words. I see that the email on the screen for any follow-up questions. You can always email that email with any questions about either the webinar or just camp in general. Yeah, does anyone have anything else to add?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Sarah, for reaching out to us. I think I speak for all of us when I say we're really passionate about camp and always excited to spread the word and talk to others about it. So thank you all. I can't see how many of you there are, but thank you to those who decided to join and for any who may watch it later. We appreciate you guys tuning in and are just grateful to be here. So thank you guys.
Great. And the recording will be available within the week on our YouTube page, and you can watch for that on our socials as well. So it'll be supporting people into the future as well. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye.